Hey Stella,
Hey, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks. Whoa, this tons of people showed up so fast. Wow.
Hey Jesse.
Hello, hello. How's it going?
Oh, good. Annika, I just invited you to co-host. Mondior. Hi Amir.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Hello.
everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining. How are we doing? Colburn just invited you up.
Hey, everyone.
Hello. Annika and Jesse, feel free to add people up as the requests come up. I've just added Tom. Hi Tom.
Hey, what's going on?
Hello. Andrew, I should have added you as a speaker. Let me know if you can see the request.
Yeah, I also sent him a request.
Cool. And Matt's just joined, so I'm adding him as a speaker as well. All right. Okay. So thank you everybody for joining us. This is the
Hey,
second.
how's it going?
Hey everyone. This is the second episode of discussing art NFTs. We had the last one last Wednesday around curation, and today we're gonna chat about the topic of PFPs and art. It is a recorded conversation, so I hope that's okay with everyone, and we'll be then posting the recording on YouTube channel. And with this, I will pass it on to Annika to introduce herself.
Thank you, Nicole. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Annika. I'm a writer and curator. And yeah, I'm happy that we have such an incredible lineup tonight. Thank you, everyone, for making the time. Ria Myers will join us for the last 30 minutes. She's in a meeting right now, but she'll be with us. And yeah, I rewatched Ready Player One for this talk. So let's see if we see some parallels. And I hand over to Jesse now.
Thank you, Annika, and thank you, Nicole. Hey, everyone. My name is Jesse. I'm a curator, writer, and advisor in NFTs and new media art. And I guess that leaves me to kind of kick us off. And I think the best way to kick us off is first set the tone so everybody's on the same page. With PFP, we really just mean profile picture. And where that's sort of converged with NFT culture is that now you can specifically own a unique PFP that you associate with your identity. So with that out of the way, I'd love to maybe go down the list. I realize I think I'm the only person with an undoctored profile picture right now. So I guess I'm the loser in the mix. But I kind of want to go around the room and have everybody explain what their current PFP is and why, and give a sentence on who they are. But I want to get right to the fun stuff with the PFPs. So I'm just going to call based on my visual. No sort of prioritizing intended. So Matt, you are first up.
Hi. Thanks for having me. This is great. A great group. I'm Matt Medved. I'm the co-founder and CEO of NFT Now, Web3 digital media publication for NFT coverage and curation. And my profile pic, my PFP, is a crypto skull, which is an OG project from 2019. That was kind of recently rediscovered and had a bit of a surge in sales volume and attention over the past week. To me, it's important because I love kind of like digging deep into like the history of the blockchain and finding like projects that have history, and that was one that I had kind of found back in September, and it was kind of crazy to see it blow up the way it did. This skull is actually one of 10 skull lords. That's kind of like the rarest tier for the creator that our DAO picked up back in September. So I'm rocking it to kind of show love to that wave and to historical NFTs in general.
Very cool. And yeah, it's been fun to watch that crypto skulls kind of like this past week has been kooky. Andrew, you're up next. Tell us about your PFP. think maybe we lost. There's always some spaces glitching going on, so we'll navigate that. Colburn, we'll go to you. What's your profile picture?
What's up, everybody? Thank you to all the hosts for having us. Wonderful panel. This is our logo of the museum, and it is really meant to just capture early internet art. You see the pixelation of the M, the C, and the A. You see that early clip art vibes, and you have the wormhole, the Zen harmony, and the happiness. So this is unminted as of now, but this is our logo.
Very cool. All right, Andrew, we're trying you again. Hopefully it works this time.
I don't know why I kept getting rugged. Oh my gosh. It's just like the worst time. But hey everybody, I'm Andrew. I got my start in NFTs as a writer. Now I do a little bit of everything, like community building stuff. My profile picture is a cool cat. It's the work of an artist named Klon that I really like. Kind of a big representative of like cute PFP projects. And I have it as my profile picture because I think it's a big part of my life story. I basically emptied out my bank account to buy this many months ago. And maybe that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I guess we'll find time to talk about that. So, hey, everybody.
Yeah, we definitely will. I'm looking forward to it. Mark, over to you.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Mark. Same as all the other, panelists. I'm really glad to be here. I founded a art collective called Feltzine. We release a lot of different projects over essentially like our decade, history of existing. But recently have, of course, created a lot of NFT projects. One of those projects being Villains, a PFP project that I have as my profile picture right now. There's some supporters in the crowd who are rocking them. I could get into sort of my thinking behind why I created this project and sort of my approach, wanting to bring something sort of like new to PFPs with what I did there. But in general, really excited about being here and yeah.
Cool. And yeah, we'll have a little more time to dive into more details a little bit into this because there's a lot of good stories floating around this room. Stella Bell, over to you.
All right, thanks for having me on. I'm a crypto artist, writer, metaverse architect. I founded one of the first Creative Commons crypto artist collectives in 2017. And I'm also the creator of Crypto Stellas, which is a satirical PFP project, which I started on October 31st. And I started that because I realized that the new people are rewriting the history of crypto art. So I wanted to document basically the crypto art history that may be not well understood or even known about. Some of the biggest influencers in the space, namely Coin Artist, is a big one. So what I do is I call out scam artists is a part of the project. So it's the good, the bad, and the ugly of the PFP world. It'll have 777. It's a year-long project, which will be ending with potentially a coffee-sized table book and potentially some art museum exhibitions of this. So I'm documenting everything in real time based on the observations of what is going on the different levels within crypto art, and then also in the PFP. I guess I call them influenzas because I specialize in finding people that are unsavory and that have mass influence. So this is an area that I specialize in documenting. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Tom, over to you.
Hey, Jesse. Thanks, man. I'm Webb, aka Hacker.eth. I'm rocking a CryptoPunk. I think most of y'all know what the CryptoPunk is. I guess I just like pixel art. I mainly buy pixel art NFTs, to be honest. It's funny though, because like when it all popped off about a year ago, that's when I kind of, like, punks popped off. I said to Annika, I was like, yo, should I buy a punk? And we had this debate. We were like, yo, should I do it? And then I got it like a month ago, and I was like, God damn, I wish I bought this thing a year ago. But I really like CryptoPunks because I think they were probably the collection of NFTs from the crypto space that made it into the art world and kind of broke that barrier first and caused a lot of hype. And obviously they did a lot of work on the RC 721 standard, and I think what Lava Labs have done in that space is very interesting. And they were kind of like Bored Apes before Bored Apes. So as my background, I'm an artist and video game developer, and I built a 2D multiplayer exhibition, actually, Annika curated, and Jesse wrote a great piece about. And then about a year later, I evolved that into what is now the World Wide Web, which is like an interoperable metaverse game that basically allows you to run in and play as your actually, Cool Cats, funny enough, Andrew, Cool Cats have created their own pixel avatars. You'll be able to play in the web, and skulls are in there too. Everything's in there. So yeah, that's what I do. But I thought I'd get a CryptoPunk with the VR headset and a cigarette because I tend to take up smoking when I'm programming, and I live in the metaverse. So yeah, felt like it was the right thing to do. It just felt right. It was stupidly expensive, but it felt like the right thing to do.
Well, there's no better reason than that. And Monvoir rounding us out for the round of intros.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amir. And the JPEG on my profile picture is, I don't know, ape. So I've got it like a while ago for like 2 ETH, and surprisingly, that project got a lot of traction. And I think it's somehow one of the most interesting PFPs in the sort of NFT culture and the NFT community. And I chose to use it as my profile picture only because, like, I don't know, I have lots of other PFPs and I've been into this space for a long time. But like the ape is just, I don't know, I like it for now. Maybe I change it later on, but that's the only interesting part is it's an ape. That's it. And about myself, I'm a member of this community. I collect works, and I just enjoy being part of this community. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for the intros. I guess we have a really like mixed lineup of speakers, which I think will bring this conversation to become pretty interesting. But I think what I wanted to kick us off with, or we wanted to kick us off with, is a wider question for everyone, which is why do we collect PFPs? And anybody can kick us off. I don't want to pick anyone. So if anybody wants to kick us off and unmute, if not, I'll go and pick.
I can definitely jump in here. Like,
Go.
Yeah, like one of the first NFTs I bought was because it gave me access to a Discord of a community that I was interested in understanding more about, and I wanted to hear their insights in NFT space. So, if you have an NFT PFP in Discord, you can use Collabland and set it up so that certain PFPs give you access to channels. So it's got that, like, it's like a membership in a way, the utility. There's one of those things. I think the first PFP I bought, I guess, would be a Mooncat. I bought that because I thought they were hella cute. I think now, as a collector, I guess, of quite a expensive NFT, I think the reason that I get the punk is like it's in my belief, it's like it has great utility in the future, because it's the thing about these things is that, like, right now everyone is buying, or I'm not speaking for everyone, but people buy into communities. You've got the apes and you've got the cats and you've got their communities, and they're kind of exclusive and limited to the people that are in them. And what's interesting about the future is that all of these PFPs are tokens on the blockchain, and anyone can create any kind of utility, kind of like what I did with the World Wide Web. it's very easy for anyone to make, let's say like an event at Art Basel saying only punks are allowed in this VIP area, and you can verify the owner of it. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I freaking love pixel art, so I think the punks are cool as hell, which is important, right? Like, you've got to love the things you buy, but at the same time, when you think of it as like the traditional art investment, so to speak, I believe like something like a punk historically is kind of the holy grail in a way. At the same time, I bought Mooncats a long time ago. Like, I work very closely with Ponderware. They're an amazing team, and at that time it was like Mooncats are like the first on-chain customizable NFT where you can alter the on-chain NFT itself with other NFTs from their boutique, which was a piece of technology that was new and innovative. So for me, it was like, this is a really cool thing, and I bought them a year ago, and now they're starting to really kick off because the current meta is about PFPs. I mean, we're having a conversation about PFPs. So I think it's a mixture of like, of those things. But at the end of the day, for me personally, not to rant on, and I'll leave it at this, is that I think it's important, like, we are having this transitional period in our real lives where we're questioning our identity, and we're starting to very like heavily question. I mean, we've always been doing it, but like, we're really starting to question the idea of identity. And I always use this term of like, when you're born, you're assigned metadata that you can't change, and society will value or rate you or discriminate you against you because of this metadata, or give you privilege because of this metadata. But online, on the internet, we get to choose our own metadata. And the beautiful thing about PFPs is it's like artists are creating these identities formed around these communities that have beliefs in technologies, or a status quo of how we should interact with one another when it comes to identity online. So I think, the PFP now is also becoming this thing of like, we don't have to show our real faces. We can be whoever we want to be. That's my 2 cents.
Can I go next here? Is it okay if I go next?
Of course.
Yes.
I wanted to answer the question from both perspectives, being a project owner and then also being a person that collects PFPs and different art. But so one of the purposes of creating my collection was that I wanted to create shared experiences with a certain group of people who basically, I use my art as a selection tool to select the people for my own community and building it. So one of the things that my collectors did was they built the metaverse rug pull burning event that I had on New Year's. And so what that entailed was, I have an owners only channel in Discord. So, we use Collab Land. You can only get in there if you own a crypto Stella. And then from there, then I'm able to share my resources owning land in the metaverse and my experience building in there, so that basically anyone that comes into my community has rights for building, learning new things. It's educational, as well as shared experience, and also the builders of the experience itself. One of my biggest collectors was the person who built most of the experiential aspects of the last show. And so they're getting all of these tools that I'm sharing with my community. And then I also get to do a lot of experiments. For example, I manufactured chocolate from one of my NFTs, and they'll be getting this experience of like, who's going to get the golden ticket. And I'm actually sending out real chocolate to them, to the people that chose my art. And so what the goal is for me in the future, and I think a lot of people can understand that we are now aligning ourselves philosophically and socially around shared values. So that's what I want to build in the future is, and I'm using this as a prototype, and then I want to build out possibly a book on showing artists how you can actually change the dynamics of social experience based on your philosophy and what you truly believe. And you can also attract those people. Those people will come to you once they understand what you're about. And then, the right people will show up. all of this was voluntary. I didn't assign anything. It was just, here are the tools, here's the permissions, let's build together. So I want to have this culture transformed into a sharing culture instead of an extractive one. And so that's the other reason I collect crypto funks, is because I believe in the true decentralized future. I don't believe in the corporate structure of people telling you what to do. But anyway, that's my end of that.
Can I be ornery? Can I play devil's advocate here? And this is
Sure.
probably more a reaction to Hacker than to you, Stella. But of course, this is like an expression of us trying to find our identities online, and whatever that means, and being something different and changing our metadata. The problem is that like we set out to build incredibly inclusive spaces, and these profile picture projects, one, they commercialize identity in a crazy, terrible way, and it makes it incredibly exclusionary, right? Like people might identify with wanting to be a CryptoPunk, but they can't afford the $200,000 thing. So what is, I own these things, I collect these things, but I want to challenge everybody to recognize, like, what does that mean when people should have the option to be whatever they want, but we're hyper commodifying identity and we are attaching qualities to this ownership that really don't give like equal access or opportunity to everybody that wants to play in this space. And I think creates a culture of of gambling and addiction, and of trying to find like the next thing to profit and speculate on.
I mean, you can't argue with that, right? That's a brilliant point, and it just ties in the parallel of like the real world, right? All of the people that stand up and promote like the things you just discussed are also the people wearing Balenciaga trainers and Gucci jumpers, and showing an image that is also not accessible. And you can see people working every day, every hour of their day, to be able to afford those things because they want to associate themselves with these brands that also promote the same things. It's like, everything is capitalized, right? So I mean, you're right, there's a huge problem there. And I think the beauty of like, of the blockchain at least, is anyone can create anything they want and to put it on there and identify that. I think the idea, the narrative at least, that now people are moving from having their physical photo and onto something that is an artistic thing, and that to be acceptable in society, I think is a stepping stone in the right direction. But I do think, like you said, yeah, of course, it's like unaccessible 100%, like, and that's the nature of the beast, though, isn't it? It's like in a free market, which is the problem with decentralization. When you say anyone can name the price of this one thing, it's limited supply. Of course, if it's in demand, then it's going to go up, and that opens the debate of like, right, should we all have? It's like what you're describing now is the Facebook approach, right? Here's the selection of what you're allowed, and everyone gets access to those allowed things, but someone has to decide what that is, right? So you don't necessarily have that free market, and it's a conversation we're struggling to answer as well. I think you bring up an amazing point. I don't know what the answer is. I think it's like this discussion.
Well, let me just interject right here. I've been thinking a lot about this probably for a year solid, and what it is that PFPs expose human nature, and the fact that some people cling to buying clout via the PFPs, that is an indicator of that person. And the thing is that you cannot extinguish human nature. Like, you can't just decide, oh, we're not going to do this anymore, because there's always going to be a certain amount of people that will cling to buying their way in to access the clout that comes with it. I don't know what the solution is, but it drives me nuts too. And Mocha, I'm 100% what you just said. It's just that the culture has been co-opted by superficial clout vampires, is what I describe them as, because they don't stand for anything except for money, status, and ego, and clout too. And that's the wrong thing. Those are the things that are not, they don't create culture. I'm sorry. That's not what creates freedom and decentralization and education of everyone. into getting to where you don't have to work for someone else, for example. And so
But
that's a question we should be asking ourselves.
Hold
What are
on,
we
but look
doing
Tom.
at
to
art
further
collectors.
that?
Sorry.
Hold on.
But
I
like,
want to give some other people some chances to talk because we got some hands. I think Mondoir threw the hand up first.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, one thing that we need to understand is that if you are talking about a decentralized ecosystem, it means that there is no rule. We cannot, I mean, anyone can do anything as long as they are not hurting others, right? So the same way that in real world, I like to drive my Ferrari, that's the same way in crypto space. I like to wear my PFP, which is one of the most famous PFPs. And I don't wear it to just show off that, hey, you cannot afford that. And I could, so that's why I'm wearing it. No, it just, I enjoy it. And there is no point of like condemning people for wearing their expensive PFPs. I mean, all of us had a chance. Like, I'll only pay 2 ETH for my PFP, which is like nothing, right? So it's not that I wear that because it's just worth millions or hundreds of thousands. No, because it's I'm associating myself with a clan, with the tribe in this space, which is decentralized, and I like to be associated with the apes. And later, before that, I was wearing my own NFT guild skull. Before that, I was wearing Robotos. It just acknowledging all those communities and giving value to those people who created those arts, to created those communities, and keep building those communities. This is all about the PFPs. It's part of our culture in the NFT space. And we need to understand that it's a decentralized space. Anyone can do anything that they want as long as they're not hurting others. We don't want anyone to scam us, right? But we cannot tell anyone that you can, if you wear that profile picture as your PFP, if it's an ape or whatever it is, if it's expensive or not, you are sort of preaching some sort of different social status or vice versa. I mean, that narrative shouldn't be there in the first place. We are just having fun. It's all about having fun. And I'm not ape, right? I'm Amir. Everyone knows who I am. I own an art gallery in real world. Everyone knows my identity. I'm not hiding behind that ape. I'm just acknowledging that group of people because it's just one of the most important PFP projects ever. That's the only reason that I wear my PFPs. It's not to show off my wealth. I'm not wealthy. And it's
And
not to show off my social status.
And are PFPs also about art? I mean, I think we all agree that they are status symbols. I mean, Tom mentioned fashion. I mean, in the metaverse or on social media, all we have are our faces. We can't show sneakers or, I don't know, handbags. So it might be simply PFPs. But when you look at PFPs, I mean, each one of you on here, do you also look at the art? Is that something you have in mind?
Yeah.
I can speak to that. I mean, for
Okay.
me, the only thing that I really think about for PFPs, like as a creator, is the art, right? So, for instance, with villains, like creating that PFP project was speaking to the fact that for a certain type of person, right? Let's say people who are into like underground art. Let's say people who are into hip hop. Let's say people who are into like punk aesthetics. Like I'm not talking about like crypto punk aesthetics. I mean like, like outside, like real punk shit aesthetics. They don't necessarily have like a profile picture and like project to go to. That's why I created villains, right? So like I think like yeah, people can talk about utility, all that. Um, there's a whole bunch of creatives who are creating and like deciding not to care about utility at all and kind of being like forget about utility altogether. And I think like that has to be respected too, right? So and that's was also why I created villains. I think for us at Feltzine to create a project like that and rep it like that also makes it so that other people can do that. So yeah, so there's a lot behind that. So I think when we talk about the art, like I think that that's super important. I would say every profile picture project that I've ever purchased, I did so because of the art. The investment was secondary. I think that like that's cool. But for me, like it is all about the art, and like, identifying even with the community, like all that is cool. But I think sometimes that also places a lot of responsibility on artists and creators that like not every creative is interested in. Not everyone wants to build a community. Not everybody, you know what I'm saying, wants to deal with like talking to collectors in Discord all day. So I mean, I'm cool with that. Like, don't get it wrong. I'm not complaining about that. But I just want to say too that like the art is super important. And for me, when I create any NFT project, or when Feldzine, any of us in Feldzine create any NFT project in general, it's first and foremost about the art.
I want to let Matt go for it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, like, I think if you think about just art history in general, like the idea of identity has always been like a central tenet. If you think of like the history of self-portraiture and the like, and even if you look back to like early NFTs, like the early like PFPs on Namecoin, like the Twitter eggs and like the blockheads, like those were pulled in from people's Twitter avatars, at the time. Like it's like, and those were kind of like, the cave drawings of the metaverse, where like these sort of like early sketches, like where people were dealing with, kind of we look back on it, it's like reckoning with identity even then, in this sort of like proto stage. And it's interesting because I definitely agree with what Stella said about like, it's like we need to be aware and cautious as to like where this all leads, because like I think back to kind of the question about like why purchase PFPs and the like. My kind of like first PFP that I purchased that was like a significant investment on my end was a CryptoPunk, and I remember speaking to G Money about them, and him saying, well, like having a CryptoPunk is kind of like a signal that either you were there in like the early days of Ethereum, or back when they were given away for free, or like you believe that much in this space's future and in this ecosystem's future that you're willing to kind of like throw it down on the table, put the money where the mouth is. And I think there's like something to be said for the idea of like changing your profile picture to an NFT like PFP is kind of like a signal to that outside world that you're both like literally and figuratively invested in this movement. Because I think that for a lot of people, it's like, like I remember when I first changed my my like Instagram like PFP to the CryptoPunk, because it had been that on Twitter for a while, but like Instagram is more like people who are not crypto native and don't understand. And as soon as I did it, I started getting questions being like, what is that? Like I've been seeing these around, like like what's that? And that actually gave me an opening to help educate people about the space, which is kind of central to our mission at NFT Now. But like I kind of think back on that, and I guess there's a reason why I'm drawn to some of those like more historical projects, is that a lot of them were like launched when like the financial calculus of it all was either an afterthought or non-existent. Like obviously
When did you enter the space? I was just curious.
Yeah, so I got into crypto in 2013, and then
2013?
got into crypto in 2013, was doing a bunch of music and blockchain through 16, 17, and then with NFTs 2020 for me. So later to 20. So I was later to NFTs.
Because for those of us I was in 2016 built in crypto, and then 2017 is when I launched my Crypto Artist Collective, and so we were educating people about CryptoPunks, about all the different projects, Rare Pepe. And so I was there when they were given away for free. And I remember thinking to myself, when I saw the Rare Pepe community and how everyone was creating around, a meme, I thought, wow, the future is going to be, there's going to be so many different communities where everyone is going to be creating. So the whole storyline, what you just described about, oh, if you're a real serious OG, you got to buy a CryptoPunk. This derailed the vision that I feel like is the real story. And I'm just always curious, how did that happen? It's like, why and how? Because the developers of CryptoPunks were asking the Rare Pepe community to get involved, because everyone was doing the Rare Pepe community thing. And so I don't think people even know about this history about. And so it's kind of like, to me as a creator, because I'm an artist mostly, I buy some, but as a creator and believing that everyone is creative and that we have this shared ecosystem, to go from that to just buying the PFPs, it's like something happened. I don't understand. I feel like everyone is creative. And so that's kind of, I guess this whole thing is that it's easier to buy the PFPs and sell them and make money rather than create and be a part of something bigger. Like, I don't know. I'm just posing the question to everyone to think about that.
I
What
know
happened?
I know the exact turning points, but maybe before we get there, we can let everybody else
Okay,
speak.
sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would say Andrew and then next Tom.
Hey everybody. Yeah, going back to the first question, I kind of just wanted to think out loud about why PFPs and what makes them so interesting. Something I've been thinking about is like, well, one, I don't like how I look. Like I've never really liked having like my own face as a profile picture. Um, I think what's interesting is like at different moments, like profile pictures have been kind of like socially important, and people have tried to make a lot of meaning out of it. Like I think the biggest example is during a lot of like the Black Lives Matter protests. Like a lot of people were making their profile pictures like black. I know in like support of Sudan, people made it blue. Going back like to like I think 2015 when people put the Paris flag filter on their profile pictures, and a lot of it is like experimentation and like solidarity or shared tribe or shared values. Um, every time I've seen those things, there has been like a little bit of backlash because it's like, hey, you're signifying that you're part of a tribe, but how far does this really go? What does this really do? And I think of PFPs and NFTs as a kind of like contrast to that. It's interesting because on one hand it's individualized, like as an NFT, like only Amir has that ape, only I have this cool cat. Um, but then it's like this bigger tribe of this collection, and then people who believe in like Ethereum or the blockchain or NFTs, and then you have these things like it's so crazy to me. Like whenever I see that shade of red, I think of Matt. Like what the heck? Like I mean, it just goes to show that he's done a lot of work brand building with that color. The fact that I can look at that red, like it's like if I gave it a name, it would be like basic red. But like basic red is like it's like Matt's color. And what's interesting is I think PFPs are a lot more adaptive, and they evolve in a way that a picture of myself can't. Right? Like I always look the same. Like the way my hair looks, the outfit I'm wearing, and you could say this PFP is the same too. But it's interesting, right? Like people will see this cool cat now and be like, oh my gosh, it's either he was early or he's willing to hold something worth millions of dollars. But for me, it was at the time it was a stupid decision. People called me stupid because I emptied my bank account, and people said you shouldn't have done that on day one, and you got immensely lucky. And so you can see how the meaning of that changes. And people often say, hey, I miss early cool cats. I was just having that discussion before I came in. They're saying it was more wholesome. We were like hipsters. We were kind of outcasts compared to bigger projects at the time. And now we're just those bigger projects. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Part of it changes, and it's like not as much outside within your control. Part of it is really within your control. Like like Matt, like I have no idea if that red is like on chain, but it's what I associate with you. And then there's like the miso level of you are a part of a 10K community, and you probably have some more sway on how things go, whether that's a DAO or participating or sharing information. So yeah, just some thoughts, but I think it's really cool how the meaning of PFPs can change.
Thank you. Tom, you're next, and I would like to share a bit of a background story about Tom's PFP. We discussed, or he asked me, well, I would like to buy a punk. What do you think? And then at some point we discussed it a bit, and then he texted me, and I saw, well, he now has a punk. And I was like, for a couple of days, and I think I'm still confused whenever I see tweets from Tom. First, I'm like, well, what's this punk saying? So I think these PFPs really change the perception of a person. Yeah, quite interesting observation when Tom changed his profile picture. Tom?
Yeah, that was such a hard decision too, because like I did a avatar collection like at the start of the year, and they did pretty well. And so to change my avatar from like my self-portrait of myself was kind of hard. But it was funny actually, like on this identity front, I don't identify with that character anymore, which is kind of interesting, really. Like the self-portrait I made of myself from when we did the web game together, like it didn't feel like me, and so it's okay. I want to try something else that does feel like me. But yeah, that was a funny story, Annika. Going on to like this topic of we're just saying about this like community thing. I think the interesting thing as well is that like obviously like I've been in a lot of rooms and I heard a lot of people talk about the communities and the art and etc. And it's just like I feel like Annika, like I mean, like we used to go to shows, and like I know a lot of art dealers, and there's a lot of people in the art world that were buying art just because it was an investment, and that's still the case. Like Jay-Z wrote about it when he was talking about buying a painting. It was about like the money. It wasn't about I love this painting. It was like I could have made 20 million if I bought that thing when it was 4 million. So I think like the thing about the PFP thing is that the space is obviously there's a lot of people who do want to make money, and I think that's just that's the way of the world, really. I don't think that changes the power, which is going on to what like Stella was saying, that the power of what the technology can do. It's fascinating how we're talking about the art, but like it's not a piece of art that's changed the art world. It's a technology. Like Beeple was making art. He did a Louis Vuitton collaboration years before NFTs, and he didn't blow. And it was only when NFTs came along and gave digital ownership to and started educating people on that it can be a thing. It was only then did all of us now start talking about digital art in a way, like Annika and Jesse. I'm sure you can both stay for hours and talk about net art and how that didn't pop off, and video art's almost the same in some capacity. But now we're seeing this kind of like finally, it's not what we're expecting. But that said, like it's a piece of technology that's done it, and maybe the conversation is that PFPs, in a way, it's like we don't even have to talk about their artistic value as a visual aspect, but we can talk about their artistic value as a performative aspect. For example, like the Cool Cats and their community they fostered, and them being one of the the first wholesome kind of communities that came along, or the Bored Apes for being like the mega collection, or the Punks for being the first money collection. They've all changed the world. You've been to the shows. The art world has changed forever. And as a result of these PFPs, the world is going to change forever. Like Microsoft just bought Activision Blizzard to make a metaverse, and they also just bought a crypto wallet. Like they're going to build NFT games. Like it's going to change the world forever. Mark Zuckerberg's talking about bringing your stuff, being Annika sent me that. Bring your stuff, guys, meaning bring your NFTs. It's like, and that's all because of these PFPs. So I think maybe it's not just about the art; it's about the performance.
Oh God, don't talk about Zuck like that.
Stella, sorry.
We don't
Stella,
want...
sorry.
Okay,
Before
sorry.
There's a few people that have been waiting. I know I wanted to introduce Mazan as well, and let him speak. Sorry about that. Hey, Mazan.
Hey, hi, Miko. Really amazing space listening to everyone, and with my sort of background, so I'm a photographer, but I'm also the chairman of the largest cultural institution in Europe. So I've been in rooms with most of the gatekeepers in the real art world, and I'm someone that first bought my first JPEG in 2013. So I kind of sit in both worlds. And, it's been a very interesting social observation. I feel like I've been reading many chapters of Sapiens whilst being in this embryonic stage of the NFT world. And, what I would say is that a lot of us may struggle to take a step back and look at what's happening to all of us with a bird's eye view, and understand that we are already in a huge echo chamber of privilege to even be able to own NFTs. And the idea that the Tezos or the Cardano or the Ethereum that we're spending doesn't even feel like real money when we're buying PFPs for whether it's $500 or 50,000. It's an obscene amount of money for 95% of the people on this planet. And ironically, those are the very people who need this technology more than anything. And I've said this many times before, I don't knock people making money. Make your money. If you're in this game to flip 10K projects, then do that well. But just think of the merit, the democratization of merit-based opportunity that smart contract technology can truly give. There hasn't been a moment in the history of Homo sapiens where the transfer of opportunity and wealth can be this borderless and this opportune to people from every corner of this planet. And I'm seeing a lot of the muscle memory, unfortunately, of Web 2 coming very much into Web 3. And, we can talk about decentralization, but intrinsically human beings are tribal in nature. And, there are people changing how they speak. There are people that are, basically misunderstanding beyond the showcasing of the perceived wealth that they have by owning an expensive PFP, what the underlying technology can do to genuinely make the world a better place. So my viewpoint is this, and I'll give an example. I mentor thousands now of artists from my continent, Africa, and a lot of them from my country, Nigeria. And do you know how intimidated they are by by a lot of Twitter Spaces, by a lot of collections? They don't even have the confidence to feel that they even belong. I saw recently somebody posted a picture of them selling a Lamborghini to buy an ape. And yeah, it's a young kid, and he doesn't know any better. But that does say a lot about the aspirational nature and frankly, the lack of depth beyond the acquisition of some of these expensive NFTs. So what I would just finish with is, to many of the people on stage are leaders in this space. And I don't know many of you. I know some of you. And I think we should always try and remember to lead with purpose and empathy in what we are doing as builders, but also as collectors. I try and spend whatever I'm spending equally on places like Tezos, where I've seen artists that are at least as good as some of the top artists I've seen on ETH. And some of their works are not expensive, but it's not about that. It's like, this person has a calling to be an artist, and let's use this technology to make sure they see light in themselves. Just remember people's household incomes. Some people's household incomes are $250 a month. And the idea that they can get a tablet and get onto the blockchain, get onto Web3, and have people like the people that I'm speaking to now see their art and say, you know what, this voice deserves to be seen, and we lift them with our wallets, with our Twitter Spaces. We help women, we help people that have disabilities, people of color. And I think this is where this technology can truly change the world. Whether it's a PFP or art, there can be purpose with either medium. Thank you very much.
I mean, I underline everything you just said, Mizan. Like, I couldn't resonate more with everything you just said. And I think it's absolutely crucial to actually come and remind, how many people are listening to this conversation about this. And yeah, I know there's quite a lot of hands, so I wanted to let everybody speak. I think, Matt, you were first.
Yeah, no, I thought that was just brilliantly said. Thank you for that, and I agree wholeheartedly. And I think that, like, kind of getting back to the conversation about how sometimes, like, PFP projects start by representing something and then become something else. Like, I think Stella made a really great point to that, and I think, like, when you look back at, like, the history with CryptoPunks and Rare Pepes, and how, like, Rare Pepes got essentially for in many places just, like, ignored by the history books. And that was one of the reasons why we had Joe Looney on our podcast to kind of, like, try and, like, set the record straight and make sure people know what was built prior to that. I think it's interesting because I also remember when Bored Apes launched, it started as sort of like this sort of like insurge, like this, like up, like, what's the word, upstart community of like people who could like who were able to like who couldn't afford punks but like were like banding together over having apes, and it was kind of like this anti-establishment thing at first. When like CryptoPunks were this kind of like coveted status symbol project that was out of reach, and then fast forward now, like Bored Apes are like occupying that space. And that, it's interesting because like over the holidays I onboarded a lot of friends to the NFT space, like friends who had been like curious about it and the like, and but actually got them set up. They like bought their first things, and so many of them were like, oh, like I want to like buy things to flip my way up to an ape. And I was like, why? Like why an ape? Like not and I was like, is it because it is the status symbol? So because it's like this coveted thing? I was like, my recommendation was to try and find a community, or if you want to do a PFP thing, find something that like resonates with you, and go for that. But I think it is something that we see in the in the Web2 world as well. Is something starts off as like a small niche brand becomes the coveted thing, and all of a sudden it's a luxury good that excludes many people. And I think it's something we should be sensitive as we continue to build this space, because I think it would be a real shame if we and a huge missed opportunity if we just allowed Web3 to rebuild the same hierarchical structures and inequities that have characterized Web2.
Never mind.
I actually love it. Like,
go for it. Say it. Say whatever you're gonna say.
I'm gonna bite
Speak.
like Matt. I love you to pieces. I think you actually speak your truth. I don't necessarily see a lot of those values communicated in NFT now, and I don't like want to put you on the spot like that, but like the listing, the aggregating, the clickbaiting, it's and I probably should have just bit my tongue, but there is some marketing operandus that came in. I think it was what Stella Bell was touching on that makes it different. It just makes it different. So that's it.
When you said makes it different, can you? What do you mean by that? I'm just curious, because like let's have a discussion. Like let's not let's not beat around the bush. What's going on? Big scammers just were outed. Okay, so think of their influence over this whole fucking thing and how they co-opted. So what are we talking about? Like, what do we all stand for? I stand for people getting free of wage slavery. That's my main goal in life. I'll just throw that out there.
Look, Stella, the space was built on like artists creating with other artists, sharing their things one of one.
Yes.
I think that the PFP speaks to like the derivation of the culture where people are no longer individuals, but they have to feel the need to be in insular communities, right? And if we're not,
yes. But I think it's safer I feel safer now that I have my own community again, and I have people that care about my well-being because I live in a place where there's no NFT scene here. I'm in isolation in this whole crypto world. I think as people leave the 9 to 5 world of working for others, they have to answer the big questions. Why am I here? What am I doing with my time and my resources? And I think people are collectively, they want to be in groups. And I was rejecting this whole PFP thing. Believe me, I see what you're saying, but it's like in our DNA that we want to be in a group. It feels safer, right? I mean, I don't know.
Before
I mean, I'm just throwing it out there that I think it's in our DNA to want to be in a tribe of people that reflect our own philosophy and our own values.
and before we carry this conversation forward, and I love that it's heated and I want it to keep going, I also want to make sure when any direct criticism is leveled that the person to whom the criticism is being leveled at has a chance to respond. So I wanted to open the floor to Matt really quickly.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jesse, and Colburn. No, I respect your opinion, and I appreciate you being straightforward. And love to hear more about your thoughts on that, whether it's here or offline. But I think that what we're trying to do with NFT Now, the mission with NFT Now, is to empower the creators of culture and help drive mainstream adoption of NFTs. And so part of like empowering creators is about like making it a curation platform, giving, having like, regular features like Next Up, where we're uplifting rising artists, but also and showcasing, the art and creators in the space that we think are doing great things. At the same time, part of the responsibility is we also have to report on what's happening in the space, and they're, digital collectibles, specifically PFPs, are driving the market boom. So, we can't just ignore that at the same time too. And if that's where the attention is in terms of mainstream adoption, we need to lean into that in order to help bring new people in the space and bring them down into the funnel. And I'm sorry if I was, and if I'm mischaracterizing your criticism, as I said, like happy to have a really good conversation about it, whether it's here or later. So
it's good. I have a problem, of course, with all media. It's just my reaction, I guess, to the space changing. And like we've talked, like I like you and I like your intent, and maybe it's just my gut reaction to what it means for mass adoption to be occurring.
Can I like span that out though, the idea of like the tribe thing?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to throw it in there. Like, the community thing's quite two-dimensional at the moment because it's like obviously through Discord, but like I feel like as more utility comes with these these PFPs and these collections, and you start to see more of these like metaverses and games, etc. I feel like you're gonna. I mean, like, we threw a New Year's Eve party in our metaverse. It was just rad. I was a little bit tipsy. My partner passed out, and I just went on and started playing music. And I was like, "There's a few hundred people in there that they didn't have anywhere to go that night." And they went into that room and played some music, and we all reminisced. And everyone in the chat's like shouting out songs that was playing, and and it was just bizarre because it was the first time in my life I've been on the internet, and I felt like I was at a party with people that I actually liked. Like people, I could see what people were saying. I wasn't, in this loud room where I couldn't hear anything. I felt alone. I could visually see people like responding to music and responding to each other and interacting in the game as their avatars. And I recognized some of the avatars from Discord and their Twitter profiles, and I knew nothing about them other than the vibes that they brought. And that could be problematic in some sense, but at the same time, it was an interesting experience. So I feel in some way on Stur's point of the tribe thing, I think it's nice being able to create, like I played World of Warcraft as a kid. So I'm not going to lie, I've always favored me making friends online. I've made a lot of friends online. I think in today's world, now more than ever, when many of us are locked away and not allowed the freedoms we once had, I think having these ways, spaces through shared interests or values to connect are more important than ever.
I know we also have Ria that joined. Hi, Ria. How are you?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Yeah,
Great.
sorry, I couldn't make it earlier. I had a prior commitment. Yeah, so that the point about affinity group formation and the internet is really interesting because since the earliest days of the social internet, people have formed into groups, and those groups have generated their own language and culture and iconography, and they've fought with other groups. So we're seeing nothing new on that level with PFP culture. Like sort of Wikipedia deciding this week that NFTs are not art is an interesting moment to be talking about PFPs and art, because the question coming from quotes the art world end quotes of whether PFPs are art or good art or are quotes just collectibles or so on is taking place against the background of the internet's go-to reference source saying, even the art NFTs aren't art, so like possibly we should chill out a bit. But yeah, sort of on an aesthetic level, sort of the big PFP projects all have an interesting anti-aesthetic. There's always some ugliness or some brashness or some simplicity to them that I find really interesting. And in terms of can they be art or not, I think sort of the art discourse that we've inherited from the 20th century really privileges individual works of art made by ostentatious individuals who you can then identify their hand in. And cranking out 10,000 pictures seems to go against that. But I think it makes sort of the body of work all over, like it's like a Jackson Pollock picture where there isn't a singular focus. You just have to look all over it, and it's the same with sort of the 10,000 PFP projects. There's an all overness to them, which I think is aesthetically interesting, even if they, or if NFTs in general, are not art. And I see some hands.
Yeah, Mark, why don't we open to you?
Oh yeah, well, I guess first I wanted to just speak to the idea. I think Matt, you did a good job of defending yourself, but I low-key just wanted to just add something to that and just say, like, I think from my perspective, I think we have a really pretty healthy community, and I think people that are more interested in building with us than just sort of like flipping NFTs and stuff like that. And so like I just want to say, like, I think it's important that, like, to note that, like, you can cultivate your community, and I think, like, we've spoke to that, and I just want to say that it's like that's key, I think, to actually, like, working in this space. Like, I don't really care, to be honest, what's happening with a lot of other projects, because, like, I don't really need to. And I think, like, that's sort of like liberating in a sense, because, like, in web 2 space, like, I had to care about what was happening in social media, what the trends were, etc. I think now, like, you don't really have to care, and if you are, like, creating something that's legitimate and real to yourself, you kind of attract that community. And, like, I found that that's, like, a real actual thing that happens. So I just wanted to address that and say that, like, that is definitely happening. And, like, I mean, that's how I'm, like, that's how I'm living, that's how I'm supporting myself. So I just think it would be hard for me to leave this conversation and have people feel like, most of the things that are happening with PFPs right now is, like, just flipping art. That's just not, like, the case. Secondly, I just want to say, like, for me, and I think for, like, what we do at Phozine, and if you look at, like, projects like Manny's game, um, the PFP is definitely art, and it's definitely an art genre. There's people who are, like, making PFP art on purpose, and I just think that, like, to say that it's not art, or to just, like, pick a few of the big projects and say, like, that's what the aesthetics are, that's like listening to DaBaby and saying that's what hip hop is. Like, that's just absurd. So I just think, like, yeah, like, don't let the popular shit, like, control the narrative, because, like, that's not what's really happening in out here. So, and if anybody wants to tap into that, like, tap into us with Fauzi and talk to me. But, like, there's dope shit happening, and I just wanted to address that, like, on both ends.
Amir, I know you've been waiting for a while. Apologies.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, the thing is, one thing that I've been talking about for a while is that NFT is not about only art. We need to understand that NFT is not art. NFT is a medium. NFT is a technology. NFT is all about smart contract that you can do many things on top of the NFTs using that technology. One of them is art. The other use cases is a title deed for a property, is a tickets for airplane, is your identity card, is your driving license. Anything that needs to be trustless can use NFT as the underlying technology. So NFT is not art. It's not only about art. PFPs, collectibles, are another thing that are being built on top of this technology. That, I mean, not necessarily should be about art. It's another thing called collectibles, or PFPs, being used as PFPs. They are being built on top of this technology. And we shouldn't criticize PFPs in terms of, are they art or not? They are like collectibles, simple as that. In real world, we have a lot of collectibles. Of course, you guys witness all of these in auction houses or elsewhere, that people are collecting weird things, the things that they like to collect. Humans like to collect. It's always been there. We as humans, we like to collect. I've been collecting stamps for when I was a kid. I think someone's Andrew.
I think, Andrew, you're unmuted.
Oh, okay. Right. So I mean, we've always been collecting things, whatever we like, regardless of the value. Coins, stamps, like, I don't know, gums, matchboxes, right? So these, I mean, collectibles are using NFT as the underlying technology. Profile pictures are using NFTs as the underlying technology. Now, the problem that we are seeing in terms of manipulating the market, rising the prices up or driving the prices up, or some sort of interests from especially celebrities into a particular PFP project, which drove their prices like crazy high. These are because we are mixing the crypto culture with the NFTs. And that's the problem, because I've been into cryptos back in, I mean, I don't know, I mean, before Ethereum. I was in when Bitcoin was there and Litecoin was there. So the crypto culture is just, you buy into projects in a hope to make money. So that is the culture in crypto, and the same culture is now present in NFT space and is being hyped and driven by some of the people in this NFT space that some of us know, that they're famous for being flippers, and they are a bunch of wealthy people in terms of like large crypto holdings. When they decide to hype a project, they can easily do that because they have all the means to do that. We cannot ignore that. There are things going on in the NFT space, especially on collectibles, not on one-on-ones. If we understand that one-on-one artworks or edition artworks are a separate thing from PFPs, PFPs are like concert tickets, something that is being used on top of this technology, then we could understand that it can have its own market, it can have its own culture, it can have its own everything. But we can talk about, if we want to, we can talk about the NFT art, those one-on-ones or editions. Then we can talk about how we can support those artists in terms of using this technology. But I think we need to understand mainly that the NFT is the underlying technology, is a medium that we can do art on top of that. We can do collectibles, we can do concert tickets, we can do many things that can use the smart contract and the blockchain as the underlying technology. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you very much, Rico.
A lot of hands popping up, and I want to open to those hands, but I also want to weave a question in the mix if it makes sense for you to answer. Because we've talked about the tribalism aspect to PFPs, we've talked about utility, we've talked about community, we've talked about flipping. What I'm curious about, and there is a sort of art angle to this conversation, given who Nicole and Annika and I are. And so the question that's kind of bubbling in my mind is, when and how have PFPs become art or been used effectively as art in your minds? But also feel free to respond to the conversation that's going. And I think I saw Colburn's hand first, so I'll throw to Colburn.
Look, I appreciate that. I think what Amir is speaking to really speaks to one side of the problem, right? And that is, if you are using your influence to direct the negative part of crypto culture, which is rampant speculation, right? The ICO bubble was not born of rampant speculation. It was born of big and beautiful ideals, right? And this is the beauty of crypto culture, right? Individuals' right to privacy, data sovereignty, immutability, transparency. There is an inherent philosophical need for crypto, but because it is also a financial vehicle, it attracts, and it is a free market financial vehicle, it attracts people using it to profit, right? And if we and PFPs really facilitated this. It's hard to speculate on art. It happens. I think we have to go back and look at the crypto culture that Masan was speaking to, right? And that is one of empowerment, decentralization, putting the tools in the hands of people that do not have the opportunity, that do not have bank accounts, that are out there creating. Let's uncover, explore new pockets of global creativity, and let's please not feed into this rampant speculation culture and this terrible human desire to be in this just capitalist system. It's that's it. I'll stop. Thank you.
I mean, I can't agree with you more, right? Trying to get rid of, or to allow access to people to be able to have the knowledge in order to be able to create these things in the first place is one thing. But when it comes to the art world, I'm like, how is this? This is one of the issues we're having at World of Web, to try and work out the gatekeeper issue, right? Because I don't know who here is trying to get the art in a museum or try to get the art in a gallery, but it definitely ain't always super straightforward in terms of great ideas win, or great art wins, or what's popular wins. Sometimes it is what sells wins. And now capitalists, the world is, as you rightly said, driven by capitalism. So it's we have this, in this quest for decentralization, we have all of these new tools, which it's such a crazy concept, because we have this thing like DAO governance, right? Where, let's say, what's a good example? Doodles, they do this, right? Their PFPs do this. You can vote. The community suggests things they want created, or things they want to do in the community. And if you own a doodle, you can vote, on these things to be approved or not, right? But it's there's nothing democratic about that, because you can just buy loads of doodles and win the vote, theoretically speaking, right? So as you rightly said, it's in this free market, is there really any, without making rules, if you want no rules, then you and there's going to be a free market, then the rich will win. And it's the same story that's been going on for thousands of years. I don't know if there's a solution really as to how you get around that, essentially, unless you change the fundamental technology, in itself, which is what Wonderwall was saying about, the NFT as a medium, so to speak. It's it is just a piece of technology, and it is just a piece of technology that has just gone, hey, there's no rules and there's no regulation at present. Really, there is, but it's emerging, as we're all seeing. But it's a great thing I would love if anyone has got that. Sorry, Jesse, if I hope that's kind of steered on your question, but how do we control the fact that anyone can just seize ownership over these communities and voting rights, etc.?
A few hands up. Ria, do you want to?
So yeah, the traditional, or as I call it to troll people, the petrodollar art world is, as you mentioned, not exactly a democratic space. It has its own whales, it has its own gatekeepers, and the art that you make there it has to appeal to an audience that wants to pay for it, whether that is a bored billionaire or a bored state bureaucrat. At no point are you in a build it and they will come kind of scenario. You are always tracking interest, and unfortunately, because we live in a capitalist society, that means you're always tracking and appealing to financial interest. That never exhausts the meaning or the content of your work. Indeed, you can view every artwork as addressing at least two different audiences: the people who pay for it and the people who actually go and look at it. And with NFT art, I would caution people massively against viewing artists getting paid as a bad thing. That pay comes from somewhere. It comes from, to a degree, people speculating. It comes from, to a degree, pre-sales. It comes from, to a degree, people who bought some Bitcoin in 2010 and they've been sitting on it with nothing to do for it for the past decade, or 12 years now. Wow. Suddenly deciding that they'd like to buy something which appeals to their non-art world educated aesthetic tastes. So again, we find ourselves in an environment where we are making art that's being evaluated by people financially. And if we say to artists, oh, make stuff that is worthy but doesn't sell, they don't have to do that on the blockchain. They can be poor and not sell work anywhere. With PFPs, these solve the problem of needing to find large individual purchasers. Whilst it is absolutely the case that a whale can buy up a large amount of a PFP collection, it's also the case that an artist can create a large number of cheaper works as PFPs, particularly if they work in a generative style, and then that gives them a wider revenue base without them being immediately or simply beholden to whales/billionaires. So we need to be sort of subtle and disappointed and historically informed and sympathetic about the realities of the economics here. And we must not say to artists, yep, I made lots of money by accident off of the Ethereum pre-sale, but you have to work in a one-of-one style. Otherwise, I feel that, you know, you are betraying the idea of art. And then if they make PFPs and sell them, you know, if that's an answer to that. But if we're saying that PFPs are then a problem in themselves, where do the artists go? We need, like, we cannot demand that artists illustrate the gaps in our own ideology. This isn't to say that there's no such thing as a bad strategy for making or selling art, just that we really, really, really need to dig into the economics and the sociology of it a lot more than we often do at the moment, and that there's a lot of useful history here with many cautionary tales for us.
Maria, thank you. I would like to briefly ask a follow-up question, but I mean, has that much really changed? You've mentioned that PFPs are for a certain group of people who can afford buying them, but the history of art has always been sort of like the history of the face and of representation. And I mean, yeah, people with a certain status and so on, they you know, commissioned artists to paint their portrait, and that's what we see in museums these days when we walk through the, you know, I don't know, Renaissance and stuff. So what has really changed in regards to that?
So yeah, if you go through a good old-fashioned art museum, then yes, absolutely, you see portraits and portraits and portraits. These don't always look like the people who are depicted. The boring but useful old art scholar Ernst Gombrich has a book called Art and Illusion, which talks about how successive kings were portrayed on, for example, coins. Hey, it ties into cryptocurrency. And how they would use the same picture of the previous king for the new king, but everyone knew that it was the new king because the name was different. And so depiction is not always individualistic. If you look at Andy Warhol, the pop artist, excuse me, he spent the 1970s making portraits of people who could afford to pay him to, in the style of his famous 1960s silkscreen prints. Again, that's a process of anonymization. And if you look at Julian Opie, who is not as well known, but has a very distinctive style that I will get myself uninvited from various parties by saying it's a little bit like two-dimensional Funko Pops, but for a good reason. Then there is this interplay between very, very individual, put a flag down identity and normalization to the aesthetic of the day. And PFPs can totally represent your identity as a mask. Either in like a commedia mask or a ritual mask or an anonymizing but identifying mask, and this absolutely ties in to the history of art in the ways that you identify. What has changed is that we are in a moment of a shift in the internal organisation of the logic of capital. Basically, people who didn't have lots of money a couple of years ago now have, to their surprise, a bit more money and are not spending it immediately on precisely the same things that people were before. They are absolutely selling them on status signalling and on social group belonging signifiers. But that's less unique and new and novel, but rather for me personally, given that I like new things and I like different people having money, it looks like redistribution of wealth if you squint really hard and stare at it long enough. So I think, yeah, it's less an unprecedented moment than a welcome return of a moment of uncertainty. We don't know what's valuable here. We don't know what this art looks like. I would double down on a degree of anti-aesthetic, but I do recognise that there are many very, very genuinely talented artists producing work in many, many different styles here, and I absolutely don't want to erase that. So thank you to Mark for calling me in on that. So yeah, what's new here is the very tight loop integration of the technology of production, distribution, and payment. If you were a French impressionist, you had to get the train from Paris, a nice steam train, out into the countryside, set up your easel with your newly created tube paints, paint that, go back to one of the new salon galleries, and then sell it for French francs. With an NFT artwork, you have either on-chain or Web3 methods for the production, by which I mean both the technical and collaborative production of the work, for its exhibition and for its sale. And that's an intensification of previous ways of doing things, certainly, but that sort of bringing it into an all-in-one space, I think, is sort of new enough to be interesting in itself, even if it's not a primarily aesthetic phenomenon.
Thank you, Ria. And Stella, would love to hear your perspective as well.
All right, thank you so much. I did want to touch on a lot of what Ria said because I'm a one-on-one artist. I want people to understand that I've always been trying to solve the creator's problem of monetization. So when I was looking at the PFP formula of the cheap minting, I thought that's it for me. That's the formula that I want to use. And so I set out to create a one-of-one satirical PFP collection that uses elements of the successful formula, which is the cheaper minting, to allow a lot of people to come into my community. And I also want to let people know that I have solved my problems selling my art purely by listening to the original people that came in and were interested in my art in the very beginning. I asked them, how should I sell my art? Because this is a problem that affects, so many artists. It's I need to, fully flesh this out, but here it is. I listened to what they told me, and here's what they said. They said, sell some at a low price, have puzzles, contests, and provided a variety of different ways to acquire, for someone to acquire one of the paintings. So that's what I did. And so what I've created is a meritocracy. That's maybe I haven't achieved it completely, but there's been puzzle solvers. I built a cipher. A lot of them I release are called ninja drops, and they're 0.08 ETH. So by gamifying it, making it fun, and to have some people get it by chance because they're paying attention, and other people to get it because they wrote an article. So I've had writing contests. So I guess what I want to try to say is that I think for artists, we have to become more creative in the selling part. It can't just be like, okay, this is the only way to do it. So once I made that change within myself and allowed myself to experiment, trying different ways, it was in this process that I learned that I don't have to be like everyone else in selling my art, because for me, I am a creator of a daily creation. I make things every day. And so for me, I have to create. It's not even a question of what would I do if I can't. I'm a natural creator, and so for me, I just want to get this across to everyone, all artists. Like, you can try different ways for people to get your art, and it allows different kinds of people to come in to your collector base. I think of my collectors as equals now. I don't even think of people as my collectors anymore. I think of them as my friends. I look at everyone as potentially, let's make something happen. And okay, I know I've gone on about this, but I think the frustration in the artist comes because they're trying to fit into this narrow corporate, or not, capitalist system, where it's the highest bidder wins. That's the problem, in my opinion. It's not a creative way to live if you're trying to fit into that narrow thing, because you're just going to be making art for a certain type of person. Then I made art for rich collectors last year in 2020. I'm having a better time now that I'm in control of who gets my art. It creates a different value system. Anyway, okay, I'll stop there, but it's really important that people hear that.
Um,
Sorry, can I just butt back in for a sec?
sorry, Ria,
That
there's
was wonderful.
Andrew that's been waiting for a while. I don't want to cut anybody off, but he has his hand up for a bit.
Okay,
So
no
I
worries.
want to let everybody speak. Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll try to take on Stella, Ria's points, and Jesse's question as much as I can, because there are a lot of really cool ideas going on. I think something we've been talking about a lot is like the relationship between crypto as a whole and the NFT space, and those kinds of capitalistic elements within crypto, you know, flipping, buying low, selling high, and how that translates over to NFTs. I think a phenomenon worth pointing out too is that not everybody starts with crypto and ends up in NFTs. And I think like we've spoken more about that recently. It can also go the other way around, or it doesn't have to go that way at all. I think for myself, I was not in crypto. You know, I can't be like a crypto OG or whatever. Like I got into this last year because my career as a freelance writer out of college was just shit, and like it sucked. It sucked being a freelance journalist, right? And so I found NFTs, and it made sense to me very quickly. The kinds of ideas that we espouse in Web3, the idea that artists like myself and not like myself could get paid, that we could build communities, all of that were things that I didn't have. And so I kind of went in the other direction. I started with NFTs, and then gradually, and by osmosis, I learned more about crypto as a whole, because at the very least, the technology is important to understand for NFTs. And I think what's interesting too is, you know, I feel like a lot of people share that same story. A lot of artists too who never got into crypto. Um, in some ways, that's why like artists are the most wholesome in this space. Um, who might have shared my story, or struggled with gatekeepers, struggled with getting paid, paying rent, things like that. And then, you know, we found out about NFTs, and we find out about it first, and maybe that leads to less of a flipping mentality. It leads to more of a community building mentality. Um, I just kind of think that's interesting, and maybe one thing that excites me to that front, like Stella was talking about, you know, engaging her collectors in a different way, not just selling to the highest bidder. I think something cool about that too is it also educates and inspires us would-be collectors. Um, you know, because a lot of art has been gatekept. You know, people like myself, like, I don't have a really great art history background. But I think with a lot of artists, they've been able to teach me really cool things, and teach me about where they come from, like why their art is the way that it is. And that makes me more engaged as well, and makes me feel closer to art. Now to Jesse's question about seeing NFT PFPs as art and how they've been used. Something that's pretty interesting that I've noticed is that for a lot of artists, their life fine art world or historically. But for example, with Cool Cats, popular is because of Klon's story, the artist's story as a struggling freelancer, and how he was trying to find a second chance in the space. And that obviously sharing my story made a lot of sense to me, which is why it was not too difficult of a financial decision, even though on the outside it looked stupid at the time and outside of my means. I noticed that a lot of one-of-one artists tend to do this better. I think of people like Justin Aversano, who lost his twin and went on a healing journey, photographing 100 pairs of twins, and now outselling the biggest fine artists in the world by double or triple. Or think of people like Isaac Wright, Drifter Shoots. We followed him throughout him being in court, and through that process learned a lot about what it means to be an to be an artist versus a quote unquote criminal. He's always shared a lot about why him being a black man is important, and why he's against mass incarceration. I remember meeting his other collectors, who just really learned a lot about his politics through that process. And I guess maybe a question I have just real quick. Like how do you determine if an NFT PFP is like art or is really like by an artist? Like I'll give an example with Bored Apes, right? Like I think the art is cool, and it was drawn by a friend of mine, Seneca, who is incredible. And you look at her one-of-one pieces and you're like, wow, like she's amazing. But then if the project itself, I'll just say that at least in my opinion, she has no Bored Apes, was not given any Bored Apes, didn't find out about Bored Apes until they were on the New Yorker, didn't really get any revenue from the Bored Apes except for what they originally paid her. Does that make the Bored Apes like an artist's work? To what extent? Thank you.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Ria, I know you had your hand up to say something, and then I want to open up to a couple audience questions.
Cool. I just wanted to say that in revenge for sitting in on someone else's talk the other day and then realising that they had not mentioned me, but I noticed that Laterbe Avedon is in the audience, and if you want to look at the history of avatars and PFPs being art and indeed being artists, you should absolutely look at their work.
Can you repeat the name again? I couldn't understand you.
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the accent. Laterbe Avedon. I'm probably mangling it horribly. La as in the in the Latin language, turbo as in faster, Avedon as in I don't know, Avedon.
Yeah, definitely second that. Max would love to open up to you for audience question or comment.
Cool.
Oh, did we lose him?
I don't know. My connection's a little spotty out here. But hi everyone.
Hello, welcome. Did you have a question or comment to add?
I guess, yeah. I mean, what Andrew just spoke of, mass incarceration worldwide, is a near and dear issue to me, and like real world shit that we're all dealing with on a mass scale. And I think one of the promises of all these technologies is that we can actually collectively solve real world shit that no one else seems to be willing to kind of even address due to fear of retribution and things like that. And that's what I appreciate about Colburn talking about the philosophical tenets that underpin Bitcoin and these blockchains. And it's much more and much bigger than just PFPs or art or these different things. I think it's an opportunity for all of us to effectively change how society functions, because capitalism has obviously failed, and is failing constantly. And the water, and I love the phrase that I'm not sure who said it, but it's the petrochemical financed disaster that we're currently living through. And yeah, I'm just very passionate about these things, obviously, just as I am about getting kicked out of galleries for making art. And well, I don't really have anything other to say other than bleep bloop.
We love a good bleep bloop, but thank you for that perspective. Nilly, and for context, Nilly Lerner created among, there's all this different sort of contention, and I'm not trying to wade into it, but among the earliest projects conceptualizing what an NFT would be. So Nilly, I wanted to throw to you.
Okay, do you hear me good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So of course I have a lot to say, but I'll try to just relate to a few points that were brought up. By the way, great people, very intelligent conversation. I love it. Thank you, guys. So, girls. Anyways, I think it's really important to understand the PFP in terms of how people perceive it and what it would do, rather than look at it as art. I really agree with a lot of what Dorier said in terms of NFT being a technology. It is a technology and underlying technology. But what happened is that NFTs art kind of took over because of regulation issues with ICO. This is why we saw that kind of charging forward when all the ICO and the other tokenization option kind of was locked by regulations. And in terms of PFP, what we are seeing is sort of understanding of not understanding, but it is the future of identity. Everybody understands somehow that it is related to an identity, that crypto is the next identity, something of identity, online ownership of identity, all that kind of taking space, but many people don't understand the technology, don't understand when we're going with it, they feel it. I think the PFP kind of give us that sense of what it's gonna be like. And remember, we can move only as far as the lowest common ground can lead us. And consensus is the lowest common ground. So I think PFP is kind of representing that in many levels. And yes, there is great artists participating in it as craftsmen, okay? I made my living for years as an artist, but I didn't call it art when I was painting sets. It wasn't art. It was using my capabilities, but it wasn't my art. So I think there is a lot of what we're seeing is artistic capabilities being used for certain things, but it's not necessarily art. Okay. I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you for that perspective. We've now eclipsed our 90-minute goal again. Really spirited conversation. So first of all, thank you to all the amazing speakers. If everybody could join me in a round of emojis for the amazing speakers for sharing their time and perspectives. And then I wanted to hand over to Annika to tease what's coming up next.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And next up is a conversation about generative art, and speakers are among others Raphael Rosendahl, who else are we going to have? Snowfro, Justin Trimble, and a few more artists. And the next conversation takes place next week, Thursday at 8 p.m. CET. Is that correct, Jesse? Yes, Thursday, I think.
Yes, Thursday.
Excellent. So, Nicole, would you also like to say something and then we close the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was an incredible conversation, really different perspectives. For sure, there's a lot to be still discussed. I think I appreciate everyone's time and thoughts, and also all of the, I think it was like 600 people that were listening to us. So, really, really great chat. And yeah, have a lovely evening, day, wherever you are, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.